guess I'll start since my picture's on the left. My name is Eric Smith, and I am either finishing my eighth or starting my ninth year at Iliff, depending on how you count. I guess that changeover happens this next couple weeks or so. I teach mostly in the areas of New Testament and early Christianity, and then I also co-direct this degree program with my colleague, who you'll meet in a second. And that has been a really enriching part of my work at Iliff. In addition or alongside my work in academia, I am an ordained minister in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and I have worked in Denver for about 15 years in a UCC congregation. And before that, in a United Methodist congregation. So I have, I guess, a lot of congregational ministry experience, which informs my academic work and vice versa. So this is a program that kind of helps put a lot of that together. And I've really super enjoyed co-directing it with Dr. Lizardi Hajbi, who knows a lot more about some of these practical theology matters than I do, and some of these, how shall I put it, research matters. So I've learned a lot from her and from our students. So I'm really glad to be here with you today.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Christina Lizardi Hajbi. I have several titles at Iliff, but I serve primarily as the director of the Office of Professional Formation, which oversees all of the contextual education for our master's students. But I also serve as term assistant professor of leadership and formation. And so I teach courses in leadership and community formation and change, and also the research methods courses here at Iliff. And I co-direct the program along with Eric. I've been at Iliff now for 4 years, so I'm at the beginning of my 5th year at the school, and I am an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ and have served in higher education settings doing multicultural, intercultural student affairs. And most recently, before coming to Iliff, I served in the national setting of the United Church of Christ, which is how I know Tara. But my time in the national setting preceded Tara. So yeah, happy to be with you all here today, and excited to learn about who each of you are.
So I think our plan is to kind of take turns describing what you see on these slides, hopefully not reading them exactly, but giving you an overview of the program, get a sense of what we're up to here, and then leave time for discussion and questions. And as Dr. Lizardi Hajbi said, for figuring out how you fit into what this program does. So a Doctor of Ministry program, any Doctor of Ministry program, is a professional doctorate, and it's the terminal degree as a practical terminal degree. So it's distinguished, from something like a PhD. It's more like a JD or a MD or an EDD, one of those degrees that serves as a kind of a capstone for a professional career. And so a Doctor of Ministry degree is a capstone for specifically people in some kind of ministry setting and or some kind of leadership position in, say, a nonprofit kind of setting, or in, hospice is a great example, William. We have other folks who are in chaplaincy or hospice or something like that. So we'll talk more about sort of that purpose and all that specifically as it relates to Iliff. Our degree program is 40 hours of coursework plus a project. And one of the things I think a lot of folks are surprised to learn in the admissions process is how important the project is. And it's really pretty critical to not only, when you get into the program and start thinking about how to make your way through it, but also it's pretty critical to the admissions process to have in mind, what do you want to do in the program? So we'll talk a lot about that project. And finally, on this slide, our application deadlines. We have a priority deadline coming up really soon, which is why we're having this information session. And then another deadline basically at the end of our fall quarter. And these are both for students to start in the January winter term. So that would be the first week or so of January, or second week. I can't remember when the quarter starts.
So, if you've looked at other degree programs at other schools, you may have looked at sort of what are some of the outcomes, what are the areas of focus that other programs have. And these are the degree program learning outcomes for our program. And I just want to go through each of these briefly, but to share with you, this is really the focus of what our program is in terms of the kinds of learning and capacities that we hope that you'll have once you complete the degree and as you engage the degree itself. So the first is to engage in ethical, substantive, and culturally relevant research process that identifies and investigates an area in ministerial context that calls for prophetic leadership. Our Doctor of Ministry is called the Dmin in prophetic leadership because we want to help individuals cultivate those kinds of capacities. And we do that at Iliff through a social justice lens and a critical perspective around social justice. The second is to develop theoretical knowledge, analytical skills, and contextual awareness that enable students to engage in, contribute to, and advance the study and practice of prophetic leadership. So whatever your context, if you're a chaplain, if you're working, as a denominational leader, we want you to gain this deeper understanding and do some really critical advanced study and research of that setting to help inform the questions that you have about a particular practice that or a particular area that you might have questions about. The third is to cultivate disciplines and tools necessary for lifelong theological reflection in the practice of ministry. And for those of you who have, gone through the master's program or a master's program or have done this, this is just a sort of a heightened version of that, right? You all know theological reflection. This is sort of a deeper, advanced way to engage in that. And the fourth is to refine competencies and self-awareness in the art of prophetic leadership within the context of culturally diverse congregations, denominations, and communities of intersectional identities and institutional cultures. And that really reflects the deep commitments that we have to understanding our identities and working across difference and in places of diversity and context that we may not particularly have identity with, but that we cultivate those capacities that you are able to work in diverse settings. So that's just a very brief overview of our program.
So you may be wondering, what do I do to get admitted to this program? And so that's what this slide is about. These requirements come largely from our accrediting body, which is the Association of Theological Schools. So these will be fairly consistent across most Dmin programs that you'll encounter. The first requirement is an MDiv or equivalent. So the MDiv is sort of the flagship degree for most theological schools, and it's the one that is sort of presumed in a degree like this. There can be exceptions to this. I, for example, don't have an MDiv. I have an MTS, and so when it came time for ordination, I had to jump through all kinds of hoops because I didn't have the one that was expected for that process. And the same is true for the DMin degree. That you're gonna, if you don't have an MDiv, then we'll need to talk about how it's equivalent what you do have. We can do that on an individual basis. 3 years, similarly, 3 years of professional experience beyond the MDiv. So this is an important kind of clause there, beyond the MDiv. These days, it's not uncommon for people to have a lot of time and experience in ministry, then go get a degree, and then say, well, I'd like a doctoral degree now. And so what we're really looking for is a little bit of time in ministry beyond the time when you did your master's degree. Because this is a degree that kind of depends upon your professional practice as a way to inform your academic work. This third point is really important. I already kind of alluded to this earlier, and this is just, what do you want to do? What is your project going to be? And now, of course, you don't have to know everything about your project. You don't have to, have it all figured out. In fact, that's what most of the program is designed to help you think through. But you should have some sense of, here's why I'd like to do this degree. Here's what has drawn me to it. Here's the problem or the issue that I'm trying to understand. Here's what I think I can contribute to the practice of ministry. Because at the end of, we'll talk more about this in a second, at the end of the program, you're going to produce knowledge. You're going to produce a project that then can be shared with other people and help other people in their practice of ministry or leadership. And so, having some clarity about what that looks like is important. And as part of that, there are a lot of things that could fall under the umbrella of ministry and leadership and, could make for great projects. Iliff, has, I think, like 16 people on the faculty. So we can't do everything. There's areas of ministry where we don't have faculty just because we're not, a huge university. So take a look at our faculty and make sure what you're proposing to do for your project is something that fits plausibly with someone, or ideally more than one person on our faculty. A good example is, let's say you're thinking about sacred music. Sacred music is great. It's a super important part of, say, parish ministry. We don't have really anyone on our faculty who could help you with that. So we would have to say, sorry, why don't you try out this other program? So just make sure that you can point to people, and do point to people in your application who are on the faculty who can maybe speak to the questions you're asking. Finally, recommendations. These are pretty important, as ways to speak to, of course, your academic abilities. You're going to want someone to be able to say, yes, this person is capable of doing doctoral level work, but also people who can speak to your professional life and, to kind of say who you are as a formed and practicing professional leader in a community. So those we read pretty carefully, and all these things we read pretty carefully as a part of the application, and think about, how can, not only can you fit into the program, but how can Iliff as an institution serve you and the things you're trying to accomplish?
So just to give you a taste of the kinds of courses that you'll be taking, this is a list of the required courses. And we designed this program so that the courses themselves would help you think about and articulate different aspects of your project, so that by the time you get to the project phase or the project proposal phase, you're not saying, oh my gosh, how do I start? Where do I start? So the first course that you would take, which begins in the winter, would be the foundational seminar. And that's a course that either Eric or I teach, or both of us have taught in the past. And it really orients you to what is this degree and what is doctoral education and doctoral formation. And so, and we look at different aspects of prophetic leadership and how that might inform your particular project. And then we have a number of courses that help you actually with those specific aspects of your project. So the research methods and ethics in lived religion practical theology is where you learn about research methods that you would undertake for your project. And you think through those and you reflect on which one or ones might be helpful for your particular project. And then in the second year, you'll do the Dmin seminar in advanced practical theological research. And that course helps you think about, well, what are the theoretical and the theological frameworks that I'll be utilizing for my project? And we have core faculty who teach these classes, and in some instances we have adjunct faculty who are ministry professionals themselves who teach these really important classes. And then we also have an advanced library research methods class. And this is for your literature review. What have others said about your topic and your project? And how does that inform your project? And what unique thing do you want to contribute to that literature that's already been written. And finally, this culminates in the actual proposal seminar. So this core course, you write your proposal for your project, and you're given guidance throughout that course so that when you get to the project phase and you propose this proposal as part of the process, you're well equipped with the tools. And hopefully the process moves more quickly. So you're not just getting to that phase and saying, oh my gosh, what do I need to do? These courses really are designed to help you throughout.
And of course, there are electives. Electives come pretty regularly through as you progress through the program. And electives really can be one of two things. One, they can be upper level courses that are part of the regular Iliff curriculum. And many of those we have sort of scheduled and designed with Dmin students in mind. So for example, this decolonizing congregational leadership class, Dr. Lizardi Hajbi teaches this, and it was revamped and moved in the curriculum in a way that made it accessible to Dmin students. So we have you in mind in a lot of these classes. The other thing that's possible is independent studies. So as you move through the program, you'll be asked, hey, think about faculty, already we ask you in admissions, think about faculty you want to work with. But as that gets sort of narrowed down, it might be that you can go to those faculty people and say, I'd really like to do an independent study on this particular aspect. There's not a class on this at Iliff, but I'd like to think about this. And that happens pretty regularly that faculty do those kinds of classes. So a couple different ways to do this, to get your elective courses, but we find that there's a pretty rich, selection. And we try, as I said, we try to schedule these courses when we know that Dmin students don't have a required course already on the schedule. So we're putting them where we know that you'll need them.
So we've already talked a lot about the project, but here are some more specifics about the project. So we've talked about how the core courses and the proposal seminar help you to frame your project. And the proposal itself outlines your project, right? Its importance, the proposed research model, the methodology, the scope, some of the literature that you will engage, and IRB approval. And IRB approval is something that you'll get introduced to in your research methods class, but it's a fun process of approval for research with human subjects. And it's a government required process, but we guide you through that, and we guide you through the necessary paperwork and the trainings that you would need to do in order to do that process. And we work with the University of Denver for approval for that process. So they actually hold that responsibility for Iliff, and we work with them through that. For your project, you should identify, and this is where in your application you may want to name some faculty that you think might align with your interest in your project, but a project director and a committee, which is 2 additional people who will help guide your actual project and the writing and the research. So the director is really the main person that you work with. That's the faculty person that really works with you more closely. The committee consists of 1 other Iliff faculty person who also aligns with those interests, but the 3rd committee person is actually, we ask they be a practitioner in the field, so that they could be a chaplain if you're doing something around chaplaincy, someone who's an expert in practice, so that you have this holistic group of people providing feedback and guiding your project. And once the proposal is done, you'll engage in a proposal conversation with that committee, and they'll talk with you about your project and what areas and directions you might want to take for the project itself. And then that culminates in a conversation once you finish the project in terms of, is this something that is then approved for you receiving the Dmin degree. So there are a couple of conversations that take place throughout the process, one for your proposal and one for your actual finishing of your project. But it's important to make sure that you're communicating with your whole committee throughout, and particularly with your project director.
So once you have had that proposal conversation where you talk about your proposal and it gets approved and everyone, you know, gives you notes and everything, it's time to do your Dmin project. And the headline here is the project is normally about 75 pages. So we're not talking, you know, 500-page book or anything like that. And it's sort of for a project like this, it's not helpful to filibuster your way into a big book that no one ever wants to read, but rather we want to package this in a way that makes it accessible and useful. So 75 to 100 pages maybe. And these bullet points are really important. Grounded in the practice of ministry. That's a refrain you've heard already a bunch of times today. This is grounded in the practice of ministry, whatever that means for your context. Rooted in the study of religion and culture. Attentive. This is that 4th degree learning goal that we talked about earlier. Attentive to complex analysis of religious, cultural, and material realities. Concerned with the nature and function of leadership. So you know, that's in the name of the degree. Leadership. How does leadership function in this project? Complex analysis of context and responsible contemporary scholarship. So these are really just reflections back of those claims about the degree program as a whole, those degree program learning goals, that we want the project to be reflective of those as well.
So in terms of timing, the project should normally be completed within 3 academic years of finishing your proposal seminar. So that would be a total of about 5.5, or 6 years for this degree. We have individuals who will complete it like under the 6 years. So we have someone, I think, who might be complete in 5 years. We have someone who may need an extension beyond the 6 years. And so it varies based on your own particular life circumstances, but hopefully that you'll be able to get the project done within 3 years after your coursework. And as we said before, the culminating conversation will review the project. And this is actually a public presentation. So your peers are invited to this, other faculty are invited to this public presentation, and other students as well. If there are master students who want to participate, you know, colleagues of yours, friends of yours who want to be a part of it, they're welcome to do so as well, because we want this knowledge to be shared more broadly beyond just the scope of our school or the faculty who are reviewing the project.
Just one additional note on that timeline thing. It's interesting. Our first cohort in this degree program started in January 2020. So I don't know that they will be representative of, you know, the amount of time they've taken, because they have, as you can imagine, had a really interesting go of it, you know, starting at that point. In fact, Tara, we had someone in that first cohort come to campus for gathering days, which is when we bring students to campus for on-campus time, in February of 2020, and we were all sitting in a room together, and she's a hospital chaplain in Seattle.
Yeah, Lorraine. She speaks highly of the program. Yes.
And she was already like, "Oh, I don't know, this isn't going great," you know, because Seattle was one of the early hotspots. So yeah, it might not be that their experiences that you might get through quicker. I don't know. But what you're looking at here is just a book list from that first seminar. This is the one that Dr. Hajbi and I have taught together, and sometimes we might teach it individually, just to give you a sense of the kinds of things we're reading. So there are some books on here that are about theological education as a field. There are some in here that are specifically about leadership studies. There's a book on here by Walter Brueggemann, who's a Bible scholar. So we're looking at a bunch of different ways to think about this question of what is prophetic leadership, and how can we come at it from a bunch of different angles.
And just to give you a little deeper dive into that course, because we know that you are ministry professionals and we expect you to be ministry professionals, that means you have actual other roles besides academic work. And so we try to structure at least the foundational courses knowing that you have these other professional lives, other personal lives, and not to overburden you, at least in some ways. So a sample weekly schedule, at least for the Dmin course, the foundational course, might be Monday, you do the reading, or over the weekend, you would engage the readings. Tuesday, you would either discuss the materials or offer your initial thoughts about these materials. And we do this through an online platform, asynchronous platform. So you would be doing most of these courses online, and you would be engaging in discussion with your peers and with the instructor on this platform. Wednesday, you would do continued dialogue, and then perhaps Friday, you would have another assignment of discussion where you would say, well, how do these materials inform your own context and leadership? And there might be specific questions that the instructors provide around that. So in addition, there will be, of course, papers in courses, special projects that you'll do, but all of this is done in mind with your particular project.
Back to that question of the application, because you might be thinking about that, especially if you're going for that end of August deadline. So there are a few essay questions we ask you to address in the process. The two of them you see here are really, they're sort of interlocked with each other. They're separate, but they both speak to what we're looking for. One is about your ministry experience, and in whatever context that is, and the other is your academic preparation. So for both of these, we're looking for breadth and depth. We're looking for the ways you have been prepared as a professional for a degree program like this. So anything you can tell us that tell us your story. Tell us how you come to this point in your career, what your preparation has been, what your experiences have been, because all of these things, again, go into what you're going to be doing for this degree and for your project ultimately. So we're really looking for a lot of texture to who you are as a professional person.
And these are the other two questions that we ask for in the application. The third question around academic research, we ask you to reflect on a book, an article, or a current research of a faculty member. And this might be something that you've read recently, something that's really piqued your interest, and relating it to your own personal and professional development and its relationship to the kinds of things that you would learn in study at Iliff. So really in this question, we want to see, are you able to do theological reflection? Are you able to reflect on your own ministry experience and personal identities in relationship to the theological tradition, the biblical tradition that you might come from? The fourth one is what we've shared about all along. What is your idea about your project? What are the questions that you have around your own ministry practice, around your context that require further study? And what outcomes do you imagine for yourself as a result of engaging this question and this project in this particular degree program at Iliff? And this is the place where you do mention, here are some faculty that might work really well with me and help me to engage these questions more thoughtfully.
The money. This is a program that costs total about $24,000. It's not a program that's billed a certain amount per year, which is sometimes how master's programs work. Instead, it's a program that's billed as you take classes. So if you take 4 hours, you'll be billed for 4 hours. This number 24,000 is what you get by multiplying $600 per credit hour by the number of credit hours that the degree program is. There are a few other kind of small costs. When you have finished your coursework, but you haven't finished your project, there's a what do we call that, Dr. Lizardi-Hajbi? I can't remember.
Continuing registration.
continuing registration fee. It's sort of a nominal amount, but it's so that the government doesn't make you start paying back student loans and that kind of thing. But the program is about 24,000. Students often ask about financial aid. When we first started the program, there was not really financial aid, and we've developed some as time has gone on, and Brother Daniel can help you think about that. The other thing, sometimes I tell students, neither of you is in a sort of parish setting, but often, people can go to their congregations and say, hey, could you cover part of it? There may be other sources, that could, professional development funds, that kind of thing. So we encourage you to kind of look around for that. And our financial aid director, Goldie Ector, is brilliant at this. She can help you kind of track down sources of funding that no one even knew were there. So I encourage you to get in touch with her and think through a plan for how to pay for the program.